traffic around the city by disseminating information to help people make decisions about how to move across Lagos. We know how bad the traffic is here. That business has now become a phenomenal story in and of itself. We invested well over $30 million into that project. That was step one. We then decided to think about some other sectors. I personally had a passion for healthcare. I saw that in Nigeria compared to the UK, my father himself is a doctor, there was a lack of primary healthcare in the country. So if you're ill and if you have a headache or a cold, catarrh, you would ordinarily go and meet a GP. You would go and meet what we call a physician in the US. But we don't really have that here in Nigeria. In fact, one of the stories that I have was I went to a hospital with a friend here in Lagos. I think we went to Luth. She was supposed to be having surgery at 8 a.m. in the morning. And the surgery was supposed to be 30 minutes, and then she would be finished by 10 o'clock, and we would go home. And that surgery didn't happen until 10 a.m. the next day. 10 a.m. the next day. And it was the rainy season, and at that time, they had no place for us to wait inside the hospital, and we had to wait outside in the rain over the course of 24 hours. And I said to myself, that wasn't just compassion, that was anger. We had to do something to help solve that problem. And I decided that I wanted to understand the sector, so I actually took the time to go and travel the city, and go and meet and visit lots of pharmacies and hospitals to understand the sector properly. And one of the things that I would say is that it's important for you to do the research ahead of time. I think entrepreneurship is built out of hunger, and it's built out of humility. I got into my car, I say my poor car. My dad bought me a wonderful car, which I completely destroyed traveling across Lagos from Okokomaiko, Alaba, Ikotun. I mean, I know Lagos better than most of you guys here in the church, even better than my driver, because every single weekend I would get inside my car and I would visit as many pharmacies as I could. And you have to do that research. You have to understand. If you're entering a sector, you have to understand the gaps. You have to understand the problems. I would sit outside under the sun. I would take a pen and paper. I would write all the different issues. I would speak to the shopkeeper. I would go look at the shelves. I would find out what they're selling. All of that was the information that I needed to then go and build out what became a big chain of pharmacies across Lagos that's been very successful. And then finally, with Move, which is the business that I've been building very recently, that business was built out of an excitement for technology going back 3 years ago now. There were some very successful startups in the tech space. Who is one of my own founders in the Move business himself, he had built 2 businesses. And I decided that I wanted to build a business in the finance sector to transform the experience for Africans in finance. And one of the things that we had seen was that there was a lack of access to credit. It was very difficult for people to get a loan for a house, a loan for a home. And again, this was built out of compassion. I was watching people struggle to just live their daily lives and get access to credit. So we built the Move business. And Move essentially is a vehicle finance business. So you would have seen our cars, our Suzuki vehicles. Maybe some of you have if you took an Uber today, you would have taken one of our cars to church. And all we are doing is we're trying to offer people access to sustainable credit at low cost, because we saw that it was very expensive to get a loan. And what we do is we give you a vehicle, we give you a loan, and we give you the ability to pay off that loan over a 4-year period of time. And now what we've done in less than 3 years is we've built a business that is serving almost 20,000 people globally. Some people think our business is only in Lagos. We actually operate in 13 cities globally. We are in Accra, Joburg, Cape Town. We operate in 4 cities in India. The value of the business is moving onwards towards $1 billion in less than 3 years. We've raised $300 million. We have investors from some of the biggest venture capital firms in the world, including probably the #1 sovereign wealth fund from the Middle East. And I'm very proud to say that that business was built from Lagos. So, you know, one of the few stories where a business has gone global from this city. I'm very proud to say that. And I'm also very proud to say that I built it from Elevation Church.
Let's put our hands together for Mr. Odunsi. Thank you. Thank you so much for, sharing your story. And we deliberately took time to listen to you because you really laid a good foundation for us to build on. I had to speak about passion, turning passion into compassion, solving a problem at scale. I had to talk about research. And I had to talk about, identifying the gaps. Mr. Aboyeji, you have, to the glory of God, been part of 2 unicorns. And it's not just an ordinary unicorn. We've seen unicorns on 1st of January, and by 31st of December, they become babycorns, right? For so many reasons, Some will manipulate numbers, and then the investors will find out, and they pull the plug, and then they move from unicorns to babycorns. In your case, and we really want you to share your story. So Andela is still a unicorn. Flutterway is a unicorn. You're doing Future Africa. What we want you to share with people in the room, tell us about your journey. You are co-founders. Were you people of the same faith? What were the challenges that you faced and which you have surpassed? There are no more challenges. You've been able to turn them to success stories. Share a little bit of that from your experience.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Pastor. My own story really starts with Jesus. For me, because when I moved back to Nigeria in 2013, unlike my brother Jide, I would grow up in Nigeria. I just went to school in Canada, but I knew that in Canada, and then this is going to sound surprising for most people, I just knew this was not where I was supposed to be. It was so cold. There were no problems to solve. I tried to build a business there. It didn't work. And so in 2013, I was so depressed. I was living in Waterloo. And, I heard God tell me very clearly, I didn't send you here. So I packed my bags without my parents' knowledge. I wasn't as well behaved as Jide. So I packed my bags and bought a one-way ticket to Abuja. July 5th. The ticket left Canada July 4th, 2013. And so almost exactly 10 years in a few days. And I said, I'm going to Abuja. So I went and stayed with one of my uncles. And I started trying something. I was doing something. But that thing also did not go well. It didn't go well. It was a business called Fora. And the big idea was, okay, what we were doing in Canada that didn't work, let's bring it to Nigeria. Maybe God said, I'm not supposed to be in Canada. Let me come to Nigeria and try the same thing. And then I did it. But you see, one fateful day, God showed me something. I was coming back. At that time, I tried to do something in Abuja with NUC. NUC rejected it. So I moved to Lagos. And while I was in Lagos I pivoted the business. Now we're selling online degree programs. So one day I was coming home from work. Then I was squatting with one of my other uncles me and my father were fighting because I came back. So I was squatting with another uncle of mine in Surulere. So I was going past National Stadium. It was on a Saturday. There were lots of people. So I asked, obviously I got out of the downfall. I now asked one of the people on the road, what happened now? Why is there so much traffic? While I was trying to walk through Ojo Elegba to Eric Moorside. And he said, that people came for immigration exam, and there was a stampede, and that some people died. And that's why there was a lot of traffic. That never left my head. That smart young people came for a job and they didn't leave the place alive. So I started saying, if all these young people could have come for this, then they must be so desperate, they must be willing to learn anything. So I just kept that thought in my head, and then I just continued with my day. Now, the business I tried to do, it was going okay. It wasn't bad, I was surviving, but that December, I said to myself, look, I can't continue like this. I don't know how many of you may have experienced stagnancy in your life, right? But I was just stagnating. So I said, I can't continue like this. So you know what I did? I decided to do prodigal son, and I went to Warri, where my parents were at the time. So I went back home, and I did prayer and fasting. We always have this prayer and fasting we do. We did it for 2 weeks. So I did prayer and fasting. And then, the word of God just came to me like a thunderbolt during one of the ministrations. And he said, even young people will get weary, right? But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They will exactly. So this is in Isaiah 31, I believe. 31, yes. So that was the verse I held on to. And, my last card, I remember, I sold it on that altar, and then I came back to Lagos. And when I came back, the one thing that God really put in my heart was this idea that ministry begins with service. So the businesses that we built from then on were no longer, for me, before that point, it was all about how do I make money, how do I become a billionaire, how do I grow, how do I this. But then it became about service from that time. So I miraculously, I received another investment from an investor shortly after I came back to Lagos. An old investor we had pitched a long time ago, and he said as part of the investment, we should come over to New York and meet with him. I also thought, since I'm traveling, let me use that opportunity to also pitch a few investors. And in fact, I think that was when we went to MIT with Jide. So me and Jide go back a very long way. So I went to speak at the MIT conference as well. He invited me to come and speak at MIT. So when I got there to New York, I had this old mentor friend of mine. His name is Jeremy Johnson. I had met. And I was emailing him, trying to see whether he would invest. He was running a very big company doing something similar to what we were doing at the time, which was selling online degree programs. And I said, this would be the perfect investor. I didn't know God had other plans in mind. I got to New York. I emailed him. He didn't respond. God told me, wait. So the program ended, and I stayed. And I continued emailing him. The last day I said, God, this is the whole money. It has almost finished. He said, wait, one more day. That evening, I got an email, very apologetic, said, so sorry. I just turned 30, and I just IPO'd my company on the stock exchange. So you can only imagine how busy I've been. Please, can we meet now? And I was supposed to go tomorrow because I said, the money has finished. So if I can't see this man today. And we went and we sat down at Fresh & Co. in New York, and we talked about it. And then he was now complaining that, look, in my company, I have a problem. And my problem is that I have Salesforce administrator roles. I can't fill them. Can you help me? And I said, Salesforce administrator roles. I said, well, in Nigeria, young people can learn anything. They're so determined. I told him about this story of this stuff, and he was so intrigued. So he said, you know what? Why don't you go and help me train some Salesforce administrators, right? I don't mind paying you for them. I'll pay you up to, at the time, he was saying he was looking for somebody in New York that he would pay up to $150,000. And I said, well, you know, we can do that for even less than half of that amount and make profits. So I just jumped into it, left the business I was doing, called my team, we jumped into this. And that was how Andela started. Now, why am I telling this story? It started, my orientation changed from what can I do to make money to what can I do to serve people and help them make money. Which was why when Flutterwave came around, again, obedience was so easy for me because we realized that we're serving all these young people, giving them valuable skills, but they had no options for building a business and getting paid at the time. You know, it was impossible for them to do that. And we realized that it was not just them. Merchants all over the country wanted to accept payments beyond what people could give them physically. And so when Flutterwave was introduced to me, the founders were introduced to me and said, oh, they're trying to build this. Immediately it was about how can I help these people? How can we do that? And, you know, 100 companies later, same thing with Move, all right? It was just about how can we serve people. So for me, I think the key insight for me is it begins with a heart of service. You know, in Matthew chapter 10, right, verse 43, you know, Jesus makes it very clear what it takes to be great. He says, whoever will be great must first do what? Serve. So it starts with service.
Thank you very much. And I like the way you landed on the anchor of the vision of this church, making greatness common. And that's really where it's coming from. Whoever wants to be great will serve. And I also love the fact that there was a God factor in everything you said about God leading you. I'm going to turn to Mrs. Adeoti. So as somebody who, by the way, Mrs. Adeoti was a recipient of the Total Peak Performer Woman. Let's appreciate Mrs. Adeoti. She received that award recently. Well done for all that you do. And I know that part of what you do is also help people, you know, to find their bearing within organizations, starting a career, growing your career. You've listened to Mr. Odunsi and Mr. Aboyeji talk about how they build businesses. Somebody is sitting in the room or online trying to understand, how do I navigate? Where do I even start from? I don't even have a job right now. What are the strategies that I can employ as an individual to start up a career? And how do I navigate that career ladder so that I can also be a success down the line? Mrs. Adeoti.
Thank you, and good afternoon, church. So my first word is from the position of faith, and it's in the book of Romans. It says, we call those things that be not as though they were. So you first must understand your positioning and the capacity to call forth what you desire. Because it's the same principle that was used in the book of Genesis. Let there be. So you must first of all understand all of that, because you can have your certificates, you can have everything. Without the authority of the word, you may not get anywhere. The second thing I would say is do a social map of your connections. And when I say social map, who are the people you know? What do you have access to? Third is, have you even found out what you want to do? Because you can create a social map. You may have uncle, you may have friends who have already risen, you may be in a church like this, you may have associations, old school, but even when you do all of that, if you don't know where you are going, how do you know when you get there? So the next thing is to understand, have a goal of the career that you desire. And in the course of having that goal, that means that you have to open your eyes to see. So I often say that one of the things that you leverage on, both of them, both Jide and he have mentioned something about serving, having a heart of compassion. Please listen. At times, the easiest way to even get anything is to volunteer. Volunteer. Why? While you are serving, you never know whom you will meet. And there are a lot of biblical examples around that. I am also, of course, a living witness of that. I have met people who then introduce, and then the next thing is you are called to do something. So I would say volunteer. The beauty of volunteering is this. Most of the jobs that you are applying for, they do not need how much you're earning. What they need is the experience and the value you are coming to add to the organization. You heard both of them. They wanted to solve a problem. The reason you are coming to an organization is to solve a problem, is not to earn a salary. The salary comes as a result of the problems you are called to solve. So the thing is, volunteer. I would say volunteer because in the course of volunteering, what do you build? You build experience. And it is that experience that you come back to put on your resume. Now, what your resume does is your resume is a door opener. It's a selling brand. It's selling you. It shows your experience and the capacity for the things you can do. And so because it shows the capacity for the things you can do, anybody picking it up is looking at what you have achieved. And it is based on that achievement that a potential of the capacity you can deliver for the future is then looked at. And that capacity is what opens doors for interviews. So the next thing I would also say, because while you're doing all your mapping, because you found where you want to play, you understand. So in all of this, you need to understand your skill. You need to know the things you are excited about that you do with your hands from sleep, that nobody needs to, that comes to you naturally. So we call it skills, we call it attitude, we call it capabilities that you have that are innate inside of you. The other thing I would ask also is, who are the people that you are role modeling? And in the of that role modeling, you find out that you are developing certain things. So, yesterday, Pastor Andy mentioned something when he was talking about PG. He said, the man that says, yeah. And it's the same thing. You will see certain people, because they've been with certain persons, they begin to pick certain characteristics, mannerisms that you're following. And so when you put all of that together, the person you are role modeling, you will find that unconsciously, because as a man thinketh, so is he, you begin to move along those paths. So you would go to places where they go. You would connect with the things that they connect with. The connection of your passion, the people you role model, your capabilities, and the things you train yourself to do is a sweet spot. And in that sweet spot, you will find where you can walk. That will be a combination of all of these and your values. And when you find that, most often there are platforms like Jobberman. Even in this church, we have the Career Pro. They have different groups where they put the different jobs, because some of these things will come through referrals. They may not necessarily come through adverts, which was why I mentioned your social map. So, for example, it is one of his own social map that led to the conversation to say, look, I need you to fulfill this. And so when you put that, you would find that this would open doors for you, because you are prepared And when that opportunity comes, you are able to walk into it because the level of self-development you have done, the doors you have knocked, the places that you have been to, so those conferences, those seminars that you don't even have to pay for, go for them. Career fair holds here, go for them. And before you know it, it comes through because everything that a man can think, the forces of nature around you begins to orchestrate to make it happen for you. And so you asked, how do I succeed in the organization? Eventually, when I get into that organization, first, what is the mission of the organization? What is the goal? Where is the organization going? You must understand this. I mentioned something. The purpose for which you were brought in is to solve a problem. What are the problems that your role is meant to solve? Secondly, create a goal map. In year 1, this is what I will be. In year 2, this is what I will be. In year 3, this is what I will be. Thirdly, understand the power of collaboration. Understand the power of collaboration. You are not there alone. Other people have come before you. And when you leave, they will still come. So the question is, how would you harness to deliver the purpose for which the organization exists in the first place? If you ask these gentlemen, it is priority in their heart that you solve problems, but you collaborate with everybody. You don't want, as much as you love disruption, you don't want that one person that becomes very chaotic to the point that you hinder the organization in itself. Third, build relationships. We were having a conversation before now. Emotional intelligence is good, but you also need social intelligence. It is priority. And I recall also that Pastor Yemi spent some few times talking about relationships. Please do not despise it. Same thing yesterday. Apostle Selman mentioned the same thing. If God is going to do anything, he will do it through people. So you must understand, create a stakeholder map in that organization. Who do you need to consult? Who needs to know? And within the same organization, find sponsors, find mentors, find enablers. They are all around you. Open your eyes that you may see them, and they will support you. You cannot also afford not to have a voice. When you don't have a voice, you are not seen. When you don't have a voice, you are not seen. I've heard a number of people who would say, I just want to come, do my work, and go. I don't need to talk to anybody. It's okay. Where your voice cannot get to, the people you have spoken with are the ones who will speak for you. And therefore, when you do not have those relationships, you do not have the social currency within the organization, you have set up yourself to fail without even starting. Again, every or most organizations have a competency framework. In that competency framework, it states the skills, the attitude, the technical requirements per job family. And in that whole catalog, it shows you a career map. What do you need to acquire in terms of experience, in terms of capacity to move to the next level? You need to understand it. Ask questions. Now, never be shy to take feedback. Pastor Yemi David mentioned something. Feedback is not necessarily criticism. It saves you from self-destruction. Because you learn and you become a better version of yourself. I've seen people when they start to sulk. My boss said, this one happened, and then you create almost like a symphony of bitterness. Look, what that does for you is a rocking chair that moves nowhere. The minute, I always say to people, tell me, And I'm willing to learn. Because even when I don't know it and I ask you and you tell me, nobody's going to write it on my forehead as she's going, see that Kunbi Olodoni. See that Kunbi, she doesn't know. It's okay. Because every minute I have gained knowledge. And because you learn that, come in a place of humility and learn. You become a better version. In fact, you find that your boss will come back to you always. You will begin to enjoy favor that you never thought of because you are open to learning. That takes me another thing. Don't wait till your organization trains you. Train yourself. The day you leave, you are living with that skill and knowledge. It is not for the organization. And guess what? It is that skill and knowledge that the organization requires. That is what qualifies you for the next promotion. Because once you get it, you begin to apply the knowledge. And it is in the application of the knowledge that shows that you are ready for the next phase, as it were. And there's a whole lot more. I'm not sure how much time, but I think.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's appreciate Mrs. Adeoti for. Thank you for all of that. It's time now for you to begin to put down your questions. The ushers are in the room. You can beckon for a small sheet of paper. You can write your questions and pass on. And if you're also online, please get into the chat room of the platform through which you are connecting, and please put your questions there so that we can begin to collate the questions. Mr. Akinyemi, you wanted to make a comment, but I also want to just add my question to you so that you can just do it together. Lagos is not a fantastic place to start business. Jide shared his experience. He also talked about the fact that there was nothing to do in Canada. It was nothing to do, and then he moved in here and he found problems to solve. She has talked about how I could position, to start a career and grow my career. The aspect I wanted to speak to is the fact that we really work in a very difficult business environment. And how do you be that corporate leader in a very difficult, business environment? You're talking about external environment. She's talking about my internal staff that are also positioning. You have to manage the politics of people positioning. You have to face. How do you do all of that? But you can make your comment first, then come back to my question.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And to be part of the Accelerate Conference. It's been awesome in the last 3 days. One of the points that Mrs. Kunbi made that really resonates with me, it's the point on volunteering. Just reflecting on my career, actually today is my day one as a CEO of Lafarge. So it's not a coincidence, and using this as a platform is a great honor. I'm really grateful. Just a bit of reflection. Came back to Nigeria after my degree. I said, yes, it's going to be finance function that I really want to. The path that I've chosen. But just looking back, the over 20 years career span, it's about volunteering. Okay, so I could have chosen to stay in the finance path, but being inquisitive and challenging the status quo of, what are they doing in sales? I want to have a better engagement with my colleagues in sales. I want to go to the market to understand how the consumers, how the customers think. I want to understand the supply chain. Of course, that wasn't part of my paid job, but it's about stretching and extending yourself and dreaming of, I believe that it's about unlocking value. Okay, so you don't need to be a owner, even if you're an employee. Okay? It's about having the owner's mindset and stretching yourself and operating as if you are the owner. Because when you do that, you will stand out. Okay, so I just want to add to that. So the question on the kind of leadership that is expected today, I mean, if you look at what has happened in the last 3-4 years, there have been so many disruptions. COVID came, Ukraine-Russia war came, general economic meltdown and all that. And what does that mean? The implication of that is that the way we do business has changed. Okay? Even when you look at the advancement of technology as well. So it's the old ways 10, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, when it comes to transformation, when the man or the woman will come and will be the driving force to transform the organization. For me, I'm very passionate about people because I believe that people, they are the engine of a business. You can have the strategy, you can have the plans, you can have all your things laid down. But if you don't have the right people, and this is not just about making emotional decisions about the right people in your team who can dream with you. Because to succeed in business, not just as an entrepreneur, as an executive, you have to keep dreaming. You don't have to have all the dots connected. You just have to dream. And sometimes people will call you crazy. Just, how is this possible? I like to say this to my team, when we're looking at, look at Elon Musk. He went to the space. Look at Richard Branson, went to the space. So stretching your capacity and looking at the different possibilities of transforming the business. Because, look, one thing is constant in today's world, change would always come. It's constant. So how do you position yourself as a business to make your business resilient and increase your level of preparedness so that it won't come by a surprise? Okay? So, PG said something very profound on Wednesday when he was talking about vision. PJ said something, he said, your vision is disciplines your dream, your desire, your action, and I would say your strategy. Okay, so as a leader in this transformational phase, absolutely very important that you are clear on the sense of a higher purpose, why you are doing what you are doing, and not just you, for your team to embrace that vision so that they can run with it. And then obviously have the strategy in place and have the right organizational culture, infuse new people, and the key thing I would say is that just keep dreaming. Just keep dreaming and creating the enable environment for your team to flourish, to have debates, to argue, to challenge the status quo, and then you fly. I think that's, yes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Akinyemi. He said, keep dreaming, keep dreaming, keep dreaming. I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Odunsi. You talked about, and I like the fact that Ikotun, Yanokwaja, where else? Ayobo, where else? Surulere, Okoko Michael, Cement. I want you to speak to how you've built social capital through your businesses. How have you incorporated social impact, into what you do, empowering others? How have you done that? Maybe with something that people can learn from.
I think first and foremost,
and I'll give you 90 seconds to do that because our time is
90 seconds.
I'm just kidding you.
So I think first and foremost, it's about the philosophy around how you build businesses. So as I said before, we are trying to build businesses through compassion. We first and foremost, in my business and with my co-founder, we have always built businesses around the problems that we see. Move is no different. We identified that there was a need for financial empowerment across a population of customers that we call mobility entrepreneurs. So there is a concept of the gig worker, which is an independent contractor. And globally, there's about 1 billion of them. About 20% of them are operating in what we call the mobility sector. So they're operating either a bus or a bike or a truck or a car. So a danfo, keke napep, and so on and so forth. And many of those are now moving into these digital platforms. So they are independent, informal workers, and then they're working on an on-demand basis. And many of them are struggling to get access to financial services. In fact, many of them are struggling to get access to the banking sector full stop. And coming from, and having been raised in the UK, having studied finance, and then having studied this sector and consumer finance, you get to understand the power of being able to access the banking system. I mean, just being able to take a loan to purchase a simple vehicle is difficult to do in this country. 3 years ago, I applied for a vehicle loan from a bank that most people will know here. 3 years later, I'm still waiting for a response to my application. Okay? So that's the type of problem that we are trying to solve. And we know by solving that problem, it's going to dramatically change people's lives. We know that. We know that because we have seen in other economies globally that developed countries have been built on the ability to provide sustainable loans and credit and finance for people to get access to the assets that are critical for their life. Getting access to a home loan to buy a house. I mean, how powerful would it be if you could get access to a mortgage and own your own home in a country where we know home ownership is less than 20%? It doesn't exist at scale in this part of the world. How incredible would it be to get access to a loan that allows you to buy a brand new car, not a car that came from the US that had an accident in that part of the world. They shipped it to Nigeria on a port. They then decided to fix it up in Mushin and then sold it to you at a premium. That's not a way to live. So what we're attempting to do is we're attempting to empower people with the asset that they need to generate wealth for themselves and to generate income for themselves. You're asking me about empowerment in my business. There isn't so much empowerment in the business. Empowerment is the product of our business. And what we have seen is that you can radically transform somebody's life. The people that are driving these Suzuki cars that you're taking, don't think of them as workers. They're not workers, they're not drivers. I wouldn't even encourage you to use such derogatory terms. They're business owners, okay? Every single day they have customers. Every single day they generate revenue. And then we have given them, through the Move platform, through the way that we assess them and give them a loan, we give them access to the assets that they will then go on and own for themselves. And if this goes the way I hope it goes and the vision that God has given us for this business, they will own not one vehicle, but they will own multiple vehicles. They will own a fleet. They will employ people themselves. And I believe in entrepreneurship, and this is something for you guys to think about, and E touched on it slightly, which is that building a business that sells a product is one thing, but there's a holy grail in entrepreneurship. And that holy grail in entrepreneurship is when you build a business that helps the customer build a business, okay? Apple is the biggest company in the world, right? It's the most valuable listed company on the stock exchange. Why is it the biggest company in the world? Well, they built something called a smartphone, but it wasn't the smartphone that made them $1 trillion business. what they realized was there was an ecosystem that you could put on top of the smartphone that allowed others to build businesses. We call them apps on your phone, but really they're just small businesses. Sometimes they become very big businesses. And the smartphone gave them the access, gave those developers or entrepreneurs the opportunity to sell to customers. So, you hear the adage, sell somebody fish. We're attempting not to sell fish. That's not what we do in our business. We don't sell dry fish. Okay, we sell you the fishing rod. We've seen impact across our businesses. As I said, we're in many different cities. And you'll be amazed at the multiplier effect of giving somebody a vehicle. When you give somebody a car, it's not just that person that you've given the car to. You need to remember that as well. When you empower a man or a woman as a mobility entrepreneur, you're impacting the children. You're impacting the dependents, the grandparents. You're impacting the uncle, the auntie, the community. I would imagine that the multiplier effect of those Suzuki cars that you're taking every single day is not just the impact on that person, but the impact on maybe 50 people around that person. And that's also very transformative as well.
Let's put our hands together for Jide. If you allow Jide, did you say 2 hours? When we were having the interaction, Jide can go on for 2 hours, but thank you very much. Iyi, I want you to talk about, from your experience of Andela and Flutterwave, there are people sitting in the room who want to build tech solutions, to address problems. Can you share 1, 2, or 3 nuggets around how entrepreneurs can approach tech solutions for big problems in Africa, drawing from your experience?
I think the most important thing, drawing from the last statement I made, is that you have to take an approach of service. And when you take an approach of service, when you look for problems, what you're not thinking about is how to make money from the problems. You're thinking about what the perfect state for that customer looks like. I call them wishes. What is that customer's wish? What do they wish was possible? When we started to build Andela, we used to ask a question to the young people who came to the program, which is, what would you want your salary to be? And many of them, maybe they were being prophetic in the wrong currency. They'll say, 150,000 naira. If I can get 150,000 naira a month, no problem. Now today, many of those people are earning $150,000 a year, right? It's all about that wish. Now, once you understand your customer's wish, your job as an entrepreneur is to make that wish come true, right? And the ways you do it is by understanding, okay, this person has X. Maybe, for example, they want, because we'll soon be talking about real estate. I want to. Housing is a big problem in Nigeria. Many of us want to own homes. But your customer doesn't have that much money, right? So you have to ask yourself, what would it take for me to be able to deliver this person a decent house with the money that they have? Not many people ask those types of questions. Many people's preference is just to say, this is what it costs to build a house. And then, if you can't afford it, you can't afford it. And some of the real estate people will say, forget about it, right? But that's not a market, right? If the only way you can buy a house is if you have ₦1 billion, right? Then it's not a market, right? There are not many people like that. So the customer has expressed a wish. I want to own a home, but my paycheck is, maybe 300,000. Okay, how is it possible for me to own a home? Of course, you cannot do magic. But if you take that person's wish and you break it down into its component parts, you say, okay, do you mind a 2-bedroom? Maybe a smaller plot of land, maybe far away from town. By the time you do the math, okay, well, if you put 100,000 naira every month together, right? And you are willing to give me 100,000 naira over a period of 3 to 5 years, right? How much can that get you? 5 million. Okay. What would a 5 million naira house look like? That's where the innovation starts to come in. Okay, maybe we can use a different kind of manufacturing process. Okay, maybe we do the costing a little bit different. And it's once you perfect that process, that is when the money starts, because customer profiles are not different. You know, there are many people in the world that earn 300,000 naira. There are not many people that have 1 billion naira for a house. So you can go to all those people and then sell them a service. So solving any problem in this world is actually very easy. You know, it's just that many people, and this is the second mistake people make, they look at the results. But you have to understand, everything started small. You understand? Everything starts with one customer. There's no way you will serve. You know, I'll tell you a story that Jide can probably talk about. When we wanted to start this thing, we were talked a lot about it. Vehicle finance. Why is it that people cannot, 2% car ownership in this country, right? And it's a big problem, because even apart from what he's saying, it's part of the reason why people don't live as far away from the city center as they should. We don't have suburbia, and it's limited the growth of real estate in this country because people don't have cars. And the cost of transportation, if you don't have your own car, is incredible. So we said, okay, let's think about the problem. What can this person put away, right, towards a car? And we realized, well, if somebody pays 23,000 naira a week over a period of, 300 to 400 weeks, they've actually paid the value of a car. And you start with one driver. We try to understand the driver's economics. So, okay, well, because of the risk, we would maybe start with the entrepreneurs, which has turned out to be a good bet. And then you build it from there. So I just want to, don't think about Move, billion-dollar company. Think about driver who wants a car, who is probably already paying. If you look at the cost of transport, many of you have bought 10 cars. You just don't know. Which entrepreneur is going to say, okay, you know what? Instead of you wasting your money on transport, let me figure out a way to make it work for what you have. Let's find, even when we got into the business, the Suzuki cars, I think the first, Move was the first to bring in those cars. It's insane to me that nobody thought about it. Because people, and you know what's funny? I spent some time in a small island nation called Barbados. In Barbados, people don't drive normal, like these big gas-guzzling Toyotas. It's those Suzukis everybody's driving. That's why I thank God that they've removed fuel subsidy. So all of us will now see our level. Because some of us are living fake life. But my point again is start from the point of view of service.
Start from the point of service. Let's put our hands together for Mr. Aboyeji. Mrs. Adeoti, I have one question for you. How do you navigate from one career path to another, like moving from customer service to risk management?
Okay. So when I was talking, I mentioned about a competency framework for the organization. You also can look it up. What are the key competencies for a risk person? What is the alignment? Also, look at what a risk person needs to deliver. Look at what you currently deliver. Where is the point of congruence? Start from there. Find out the required certifications that can get into it. We mentioned mentorship. So the person you require is less than 5 connections away from you. Please understand that principle. And we talked about a social map. So if you go through your social map, you will probably find somebody who is doing something risk. Attach yourself to that person. When they have conferences, when they have seminars, please go about it. In the current organization where you are, like Lolu mentioned, he would put his self out there, go out there, ask questions. One of the challenges we have is we wait for information to come to us. Don't wait for information to come to you. Go to the risk department. What projects do they have currently? Request a job rotation. Request a short-term assignment in the risk function itself. And by the time they have a vacancy, you already have the capacity. So you will be the first person they will think of and say, look, let this person come. Or somebody has a maternity leave and they require a short fill. They can actually move you into that space. And like I had mentioned, seminars, workshops, the things that you need to develop to become to become a risk expert whilst you are still in customer service. And within the customer service team, please step up, analyze the risk that is there, start to suggest, provide innovations around risk in that place. You will begin to be seen as a subject matter expert around risk. Projects around it, take it up and learn the new things. And as you do so, you will find that the system itself starts to breathe to you and enables you to move to the next phase. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. I want you to put your hands together for my panelists. We don't have enough time to continue to stretch it. This can be a conversation that will go on for another 2 or 3 hours. We're going to stop at this point, but one more time, I want you to appreciate all of my panelists. Thank you so much for sharing from the depth of your heart and for blessing the people. I hope you were inspired. Were you inspired? One more time, please let me appreciate my panelists as they take a step forward for photo. PG would like to invite you to please join.